The general public recognizes VTubers as a form of entertainment via live performance through a virtual representation. The inner lives of the VTubers have been a hotly discussed topic among a lot of VTuber fans out of curiosity. After all, being a VTuber is a cooperation between the real-life actor and the virtual icon. However, the importance of the actor's role does not reach public consensus. The actor of the virtual idol sometimes is not being recognized for their influence of the branding as a whole, and unfortunately in some occasions is being treated as just merely a replaceable product. In a way, this perception is similar to how some of the Japanese companies' employers see their employees. The traditional artisan spirit plays an important role in this concept, where employees are expected to be fully committed to their work, both mentally and physically. The employers quite often don't understand the situations their employees are currently in and treat them as an entity rather than a normal human, asking them to fully commit to their work, oftentimes doing no salary overtime work, milking the most out of them. That's why you can see a lot of companies are being labeled as black corporations in the country, where they are considered by the public to be cold-blooded and do not sympathize with the employees. The VTubers we are talking about here today is called the Game Club Project, where there are 4 VTubers acting as a member of the school game club. The primary focus of the channel is about gaming, their sides of school life, and the slapstick comedy that comes with it, kinda like Nichijou in a sense. The channel saw huge success in early 2018 and since has been one of the bigger VTuber channels. The company behind the channel is called Unlimited, which recently changed its name to Brave Group. It was being accused of mistreating the 4 actors behind the characters of the channel, and the CEO had been discovered to have inappropriate speeches in social media. Now, let's dive right into the fate of the Game Club project. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the same can be said for everything. You can't just be successful out of nowhere. You will need to lay bricks every day in order to have something built. The Game Club project started their channel as a gaming channel at the start of 2018. Their first video was posted on 6th of March 2018, where Kaede Yumesaki played Pokemon Sun and Moon. This and a lot of the consecutive videos did not see very huge success, until later at 5th of May, they posted a video of an animation talking about the lack of funding of the game club and how they were at the verge of closing down the club. The tone of the video is akin to the slapstick comedy you see a lot in some comedy anime such as Nichijou. Slapstick comedy has played a very important part of the Japanese internet culture, which comes from the old Japanese style of television comedy. This comedy style evolves around contradiction, where a comedian often misunderstands the little things in life, while another comedian will address the overreacting tone of the first comedian. The audience then may find it funny when the comedian has expressed a feeling or thoughts in a contradictional way. It's all about the perception of the audience, where the audience needs to understand the situation the comedians were talking about in order for them to quote-unquote get the joke. In a sense, this kind of comedy can be considered as stand-up comedy, where both of which involve the comedians doing a monologue. However, both are fundamentally different, where stand-up comedy primarily focuses on the punchline or the joke from the comedian's monologue, while in the Japanese-style comedy, it primarily focuses on the contradiction between the comedian's thoughts or reactions to an incident when compared to real life. The punchline lies on the contradiction, not the story itself. Nico Nico Douga is one of the biggest online video sharing platforms in Japan. Its culture has played an important role in the development of the Japanese internet culture, which is what we later call the Kuso comedy culture. Some of Nico Nico's earliest viral videos, besides Vocaloid, MMDs, and typical anime videos, are slapstick comedies, usually in a form of carefully edited videos of pornography. in other words, gachibase. In 2007, an internet user uploaded a clip to the site of Billy Harrington and another male actor doing an unbelievably hilarious wrestling. Since the posting of the video, a lot of Nico Nico users have started doing edits about the video, and others subsequently posted clips of similar topics. Billy Harrington, Van Darkholme, etc. have become the hot topic of Japanese internet, and it still holds true until today. The Kuso culture, in a sense, can be compared to the famous YouTube poop edits, where both of them represent the slapstick/surreal comedic side of the internet. The Game Club project video represents the internet culture brought in by Nico Nico, where the video contains a very informal tone. Even the video title suggested otherwise. The old-style Japanese comedy can also be observed in this video, where other characters will address the misunderstanding on the matter. This video has successfully blown up with its appeal towards the Japanese audience, and thus the Game Club channel has been posting this kind of videos more frequently. The second highest viewed video in the channel is the same kind of video, where slapstick comedies and surreal humor can be observed. The reason why this video has garnered more views than the previous mentioned video can be attributed to its more chaotic nature. This video has vastly different pacing and plot, which makes the video more akin towards the shitposting style of videos. Slapstick/surreal comedy has also been a popular trend on YouTube. Besides the previously mentioned YouTube poop, surreal memes and overly exaggerated videos have played a big role in the rise of the YouTube culture. The chaotic and illogical nature of these videos have garnered hundreds of thousands of views and is now one of the leading trends in YouTube. Larry the Cucumber said that, "In the future, entertainment will be randomly generated, and what we are seeing right now is the fulfillment of the prophecy." If you're interested more on the involvement of this topic, please take a look at Lessening Meme Culture's videos on this side of the internet. The Game Club project has since built its reputation on these kind of comedic videos and other gaming videos. The channel has been blooming, and everyone seems happy to watch the channel grow. At 24th of June 2019, it even reaches its all-time peak at 450,000 subs. Although there were some small dramas where in the gaming videos, the games were suspected to actually be played by someone rather than the VTuber/actor in the video. All seems well and nothing big was going on. It was until 6th of April 2019 where something big had happened to the club, and Twitter had started a flaming drama that ultimately caused one of the biggest dramas in the whole VTuber scene. What was going on? Let's have a look. Unfortunately, companies exploiting employees have a common occurrence in Japan, although in the law it explicitly stated that exploitation is illegal. For example, in the Labor Standards Law Chapter 4, quote, Article 32, an employer shall not have a worker work more than 40 hours per week, excluding rest periods. Second, an employer shall not have a worker work more than 8 hours per day for each day of the week, excluding rest periods, which, as we can see often from the newspaper, it's not really well practiced by companies. A way companies dodge the bullet is letting employees log their leave before they actually leaving the company, which means since they have logged the finish of working hours, all subsequent work done in the company is not under the name of overtime work, thus no extra salaries or fines needed to pay. There are also other aspects that can show the company is being abusive to the employees, such as excessive amounts of work, verbal abuse, etc. The Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare did not really carry out the law very well either, as often there were companies that were overlooked, or they turned a blind eye towards them. There is a long history of people's suicide or even overworking to death because of this. The tradition of artisan spirit has been so deeply rooted into people's minds, that some of the employers don't even find any wrongdoings in this regard. They justify their exploitation as a way to glorify the tradition, but in reality, more than often, these kinds of standards do not apply to modern society and could only do more harm than good. The point is, labor exploitation has been a serious problem in Japan. Fortunately, people have realized this and are trying to actively change the culture to be less lenient towards this. It is especially true for the newer generations, as globalization has brought in the Western style of thinking to the newer generations. When facing labor exploitation, they will be taking it seriously and actively voicing out their concerns. But what does all of this have to do with our beloved game club? On the 5th of April 2019, at the 5chan board, some users discovered that there were tweets of a supposed actor of the game club project about labor exploitation from the company. After comparing the voice and the Twitter using habits, they were pretty sure that the person is indeed the actor of Milia Sakuraki. They then discovered more tweets about the exploitation from the rest three of the actors, all accusing the company of oppressing the actors. Then the internet did what it's best at doing. Twitter started exploding the next day. People were discussing furiously about the incident. The incident was so big that it reached second in Twitter world trendings. The flames had started, and from that point forward it only grew bigger. Those tweets were sent out at around mid-March to early April. Although most of them were already deleted, some tweets were archived, and users from the internet have made an abridge of the situation the actors were in, which include but not limited to: actors were being subjected to 4 hours of sleep a day in the most extreme cases. Social media accounts, whether or not it's private or public, were being monitored. Sexual harassment, physical abuse, psychological abuse, labor and salary disputes, possibly held hostage to the job due to unreasonable amounts of liquidated damage fees. Above-mentioned oppressions has been in place for a year. As you can see, these are some serious allegations. Whether they are false claims or not, it should be taken seriously. After the tea spilled, a lot of the members of the community had voiced their opinion, but there were only a few VTubers voiced their opinions on this regard at this point, since most of them didn't want to be involved in the drama. One particular VTuber, however, had made a tweet calling out the naive behavior of the public, saying people who do not understand anything but only think about blaming the higher-ups first are children. Although people might not be able to understand the situation thoroughly, it is acceptable for them to state their concerns on the matter. After all, the allegations were very serious and might possibly ruin the 4 actors' prospects. This statement is implying that people expressing their support towards the 4 actors don't have the appropriate intelligence to correctly comprehend the situation thoroughly, which just doesn't make any sense, since it does not take a fully developed mind to understand how bad the abuse is. Also, not all the supporters had presented the blame the higher-ups first argument. This tweet is argument to the person, where instead of actually arguing logically, just associate the group or individual you are attacking to a negative perception, in an attempt to downplay the trustability of the point, therefore invalidating it. Moreover, this tweet was attempting to alienate the actor's supporters and the normal public, therefore downplaying the subject. The VTuber was then denounced by the public, and the VTuber started deleting comments and blocking users. Some users pointed out that the tweet was made when the VTuber were doing offline activities, which made it suspicious. Whether or not the tweets were made by the actual VTuber, it nonetheless had added oil to the fire. The VTuber did make more tweets explaining her previous tweet, but I digress. After this, there were some other VTubers/streamers expressing their opinions. Most of them were rather supportive to the actors. One streamer called Rai Baloli have expressed his feeling that he was shocked by the incident, and he uploaded a video in the next day titled Bukatsu no Yami, satirizing the situation. Other VTubers had expressed their opinions vaguely. For example, one of the 4 giants of VTubers, Kaguya Luna, in one of her tweets encouraging students and workers, at the end of the tweet, quote,
我慢はマジで無駄な時間だかんな。
which sparks discussion about whether this tweet was a direct response to the situation. Nonetheless, Twitter had been on fire for a few days. Even one of Unlimited Capital's Right Flyer Live Entertainment CEO, Hideshi Araki, responded in Twitter, quote, "I have received a lot of marshmallows," which is a question-asking site, regarding the company I have invested in. All I can say is I will try my best to make everyone that is involved in the situation happy. During the public outcry, the CEO Nishinishi Kosuke was discovered by the public to have inappropriate speeches on Twitter, some of which were extremely discriminating. There were also tweets scolding the famous animation director of Kemono Friends, Tatsuki, regarding the infamous incident of him being swapped out from the second season of Kemono Friends. We are not talking about the bad personality of the CEO, so we are just going to leave it here. The Twitter fires were so big that whether it was a fluke or not, the company's reputation will be ruined forever, facing serious allegations and a raging crowd. Let's see how Unlimited responded to the situation. The Game Club project had stopped all activities at the start of the drama. Even the personal accounts of the 4 actors were being halted. Besides a fake response from the shareholder, there was no official response being released. On the other side of the sea, however, in China's video sharing site Bilibili, an officially permitted subtitle group called
游戏部企划 Official
have released a statement saying the Game Club would not be dismissed so easily. We are still working on having a response. We hope everybody don't listen to rumors, don't believe the rumors, and don't spread the rumors. Thanks for the support. The statement not only was very vague, which did not contribute to the situation at that moment, the statement was also not released by the official company. The ones who released this were the Game Club Project's official subtitle group. With the very authoritative tone, people were very upset about the rash statement they provided. Not to mention there were people that had mistaken this statement from the subtitle group as an official response, which also made them very disappointed. The statement had hurt the reputation of the subtitle group and the company to some extent. At 11 a.m. Japanese Standard Time, 8th of April, the Unlimited Corporation finally released an official statement in response to the situation. The statement itself was very vague, contributing nothing to the matter other than they were trying to discuss with the actors. However, there are 2 things you can observe from this statement. First, they call the actors VAs. This is true in some sense, but with this appellation we can see how the company saw the VTuber actors as. Second, they say it was the tweets from those actors that caused worries from the fans. The implication of this statement was, if they did not say anything, you guys wouldn't be worried. Again, it is true in some sense, but we can clearly see the implications here. At 11 p.m. they added a statement which the main idea was they had successfully met mutual agreements regarding company policies, and they will be releasing an official statement on 11th of April. A lot of the fans were relieved about this statement and were happy about the mutual agreement, but some were still worried about the actual changes that the company would bring to the table. It was then 3 days later, at 3 p.m. 11th of April, they have released the final statement addressing the issue.
Regarding the series of incidents happened recently, our deepest apologies for the concerns and worries we had brought to you. With this opportunity, we have sincerely discussed with the VAs, and we have reached mutual agreement for the activities from now on. Let us report the results. The incident on 5th of April 2019, we received allegations from the 4 VAs of the Game Club project, claiming the video production staff were very rude, where on multiple occasions they had used languages that can be considered as verbal abuse. At the same time, we have received resignation letters from the VAs. Specifically, the verbal abuse towards the VAs had given them mental pain. Based on these allegations, after the discussion with the VAs, having a grasp on the situation, we have discovered that there were actual abuses as described in the allegations. We also know that we are lacking a management staff to properly manage the works that have been distributed to the VAs, and to have proper communication of the work details with the VAs, which leads to VAs suffering from overwork. We had a deep self-reflection. These kinds of problems definitely did not happen because of a person, but rather as a serious problem of the whole company, which leads to this incident. We also understand that, if we didn't correct this issue, it will mean trouble to the company, or rather to the Game Club project. From now on, for solving the aforementioned problem, we have decided to set up a new department that is above the business department, to specialize on management. And we will also find an independent agent for the VAs, to help control their works to an acceptable level. Furthermore, during our discussion with the VAs, we have discussed the conditions for the VAs to get back to work, which are to improve the treatment towards the VAs, and to improve the atmosphere of the company, not allowing the same incident to happen again. We understand and accept the conditions, and we have promised the VAs that the employers of the company will take the responsibility to rebuild a system that is suitable to work. At last, this incident had exposed the issues the VAs had met. But in reality, not only the oppression they face, we believe that under the name of company development and professionalism, we have understated the VAs, the staff, collabing companies and personnel related to the Game Club project's communication, treatment and their esteem. The Game Club project that was running under these conditions were the main cause of the incident. Moreover, we have a deep understanding that we should put the mental health of VAs and staff in the first place, and with this premise, to continue to provide the audience their favorite content. Please allow us to apologize again for the deep concerns by the fans and related personnel regarding the series of incidents. Our deepest apologies. We promise, we will solve this problem, and with all our heart we will bring in more high-quality content. Please keep on supporting us. Unlimited Corporation Representative Director Noguchi Kito.
Well, here was a proper response, if anything, although I'm quite surprised that there was only verbal abuse. In this statement, the company had stated to set up a higher-up for the higher-ups, which is just hilarious. The issue was at a managerial level, where the managers couldn't stop the problem from happening under their eyes. Setting up a new managing department is a slothful way to solve the problem, as this is a deep-rooted culture problem of the company. If you are putting a new manager on top of the original manager, but the manager still turns a blind eye towards labor exploitation, the same tragedy would still happen. And they even realized this in their statement, quote, "In reality, not only the oppression they face, we believe that under the name of company development and professionalism, we have understated the VAs, the staff, collabing companies and personnel related to the Game Club project's communication, treatment and their esteem. The Game Club project that was running under these conditions were the main cause of the incident. But then they only promised the employers of the company will take the responsibility to rebuild a system that is suitable for work, which is very vague and might not even deliver. On my Twitter, one of my tweets regarding the Yosola and Mel incident from Hololive, I've said that simple resignation will not do the job. I've suggested that an independent audit will need to be conducted. I think the same can be said for this incident, where it's the reform of the company that needs to be carried out by independent professionals. The incident had relations with all the staff in the company. That's why setting up an overseer will not be sufficient. Moreover, the statement did not mention any names of personnel that need to carry the responsibility to get fires from the company, besides the 4 actors that proposed a resignation, which means the abuser probably still stay in the company, which increases the risk of the problem reappearing. So it turns out the problematic CEO Nishinishi Kosuke was being fired along the 2 other managerial personnel during the reformation on 16th of June 2020. Well, they did something, props to them, but next time the dismission should happen immediately, not 1 year after, if there is a next time. Thus, the burn down of Unlimited and the Game Club project. Looking at the ashes of the remains, you might wonder what happens after all of these. Well, why don't we take a look? After the release of the 11th of April statement, the 4 actors' personal accounts had also started posting again, and a few days later at night on 15th of April, the 4 accounts of the VTubers also resumed posting. Everything seems to be going fine, right? On 28th of May, Media Sakuraki's Twitter account saw a strange change, which includes a temporary reset of the avatar, banner, bio, deletion of all non-character related tweets and arts, revert of all non-character related likes, and deletion of all collabing tweets between her and the other 3 members of the game club. Then, later on 16th of June, in her personal account, she mentioned that she had found a new job, and 2 days later she publicly announced her new job, in her personal account of course. On 27th of June, the new video on the channel have sparked discussion about the changed voice of media. Some have speculated that, since there was this tactic where recorded videos will be saved until later to release, from the audience perspective, the channel will appear to have a consistent video schedule, and this video is the result of using up all the videos that media's previous actor have recorded. Some had argued that media in the video was just sick, thus having a voice change. On 7th of July, following the speculation of media's change, a new video was posted. This time, the public realized that the voice of Haruto Tomioji had changed. A lot of them had speculated that the actors of Haruto and media had resigned from the company, and the voice change means the actors of the VTubers had finally changed. On the same day, people asked Saku Sasaki, a VTuber from Nijisanji, where she had a tight bond with Haruto, whether or not they will be playing together in the future. She responded with a straight no. During the time frame after Haruto had changed, a lot of the VTubers that were previously having a good relationship with him have tweeted out their feelings, although most of them are kind of vague, for obvious reasons. On 13th of July, a new video was posted on the channel. Again, the public recognized that the voice had changed. This time it was Ryo Kazami's voice. On 15th of July, the former actor of media had opened a personal website and posted a notice addressing her current situation. In the post, she mentions that she had left the position on 4th of June, and on 11th of July she had formally rescinded the contract. People were in joy and congratulated her for escaping the hell. During these times, Unlimited were constantly being shitted on from left to right. On the 8th of July, Unlimited opened a new channel called Tokyo Cinderella Story, but it was very quickly shut down due to the massive amounts of people reporting the channel for the sake of revenge. The Google Map landmark of the company also changed a lot. For example, it was changed to a public toilet a few times. It was quite silly, to be honest. The true big change came on 17th of July. Unlimited had released a statement titled "About the history of us founding the Game Club project and the future we prospected." The statement was very long, and I don't want to go through the translation hell again, so there's no translation here. At first, they thanked everyone about their support and how the company were passionate about making the project, etc. All that nonsense that did not really contribute to the matter greatly. They mentioned how they founded this project because of their ideology of bringing the passion of giving all your prime to games to communities of different ages. Interestingly enough, they mentioned that one of their ideals was they wanted students to have the courage to take up the responsibility of the future of Japanese esports after watching their videos. Coincidentally, one of the directors of the company had been one of the people in charge of the current Japanese esports scene. Then they go on to say how Kaede, which is one of the VTubers in the project, was passionate about games, how she had given up all her other careers to focus on games and founded the game club, etc., substituting themselves in the character of Kaede. Again, these statements did not contribute anything to the matter, and it was so far-fetched from the reality that it looks like a pitiful attempt at gaining the audience's sympathy and to justify their actions, which I believe would not work after all these incidents happening. Then here comes the main crux of them all. From our ideologies we explained earlier, rather than describing as making a VTuber, it's better to describe our goal as to make a CTuber. Lol. What? Not only did they change the definition of their project characters to the so-called CTuber, they also used red herring where they, instead of talking about the actual matter, which is the bad treatment the actors received, they talked about the nature of their project, actively denying the nature of their project as a VTuber project. The word CTuber itself already had some ambiguity, where although it was used by the media a few times, the definition of it is still unclear and the public would not use this word to describe the characters in their video. I mentioned at the start of this video, the general public recognizes VTubers as a form of entertainment via live performance through a virtual representation. No matter the nature of their videos, as long as they can fulfill the definition I mentioned above, they can be considered as VTubers by the public, not by themselves. They then stated they will be changing the VAs of Ryo and Kaede in early September. Then at the end they thanked and hoped for their fans' continuous support. Needless to say, the whole thing was just a vague response to the matter and a poor attempt at gaining some reputation, besides the fact that they have confirmed the resignation of the remaining two actors. People were outraged again for the ambiguity and the avoidance nature of the statement. You can consider the whole thing had been trashed to the ground. The Bilibili subtitle group even goes so far as to transferring the full rights of the account to Unlimited themselves, cutting clean of any relationship. On 27th of August, Unlimited have announced that they will be including all the producing staff in the description of every video they published after, which is fine in my opinion. Increasing transparency is always welcomed. Now, after knowing the whole context, why don't we do some analysis on what actually happened? The mentalities of employers and employees in the workplace has been a hot topic to discuss among the academic circle, Japan being one of the countries with a higher suicide rate. A main factor of it can be attributed to the workplace culture. Besides karoshi, there was this term called karojisatsu, literally translated to work to death suicide, which means a person worked him or herself to death intentionally. A public answer to this phenomenon is the Japanese traditional culture of considering suicide as a method of honoring personal distress. Although this explanation is somewhat true, there is more to this other than the cultural factor. In a study, it pointed out that the main reasons can be attributed to pressures resulting from a long economic recession, a new evaluation system in the workplace, and the widening gap between the traditional concept of work and a new reality. After World War II, Japan had been in an economic recession, and this still holds true until today. The recession forces the traditional companies to reconsider their workplace culture and environment. Is it really sufficient to face the upcoming challenges for the next 40 to 50 years? The reality challenges the traditional thinking of work culture and modern/westernized thinking, alienating the old traditional workers from the newborn salaryman. Unfortunately, a lot of the old employees at the time are now employers or the higher-ups at a company. The clash of old tradition from the higher-ups and the new culture the newer generations have experienced had made them reconsider the old traditional working style as a kind of abuse. For example, excessive amounts of work would be considered as normal in the pastime, kinda like the boomer mindset. The reasons of abuse towards the actors in the Game Club project might not be all attributed towards this, but I'm fairly certain that it plays an important role in why the employers were being abusive and the managerial personnel turned a blind eye towards these kinds of behavior. They expect it to be swallowed up by those actors as they are so-called a grown man to take up the responsibility of being a shakaiji. The perception of being a salaryman is to endure the abuse to show his or her willingness of becoming a responsible person of a society seems ridiculous in today's standard, and it is. The abusing person might consider this is the aforementioned tradition of the past and should not be considered a noxious manner, but studies showed otherwise. The act, if considered by others as abusing, it can cause serious mental damage and sometimes physical damage, and worst of all, it might last for generations. A study considers this as a repetitive, targeted, and destructive communication by more powerful members towards less powerful members in the workplace, and it may even cause workplace aggression and violence, which is as worse as you can think of. While the actors only voice out on Twitter but not inside the company can be mainly attributed to the concept of rank in traditional Japanese culture. The old/more experienced/higher ranked you are, the more you should be respected. Although respecting the experienced or elderly is a good ideology to have, sometimes it might repel suggestions to be properly transmitted from one person to another. The employees might just take up the abuse and choose not to complain or to complain at personal social media platforms because of the set concept of rank and the aforementioned responsibility of a member in society. Another reason why they won't speak up directly can be attributed to their mindset of constructive resistance of abuse. In a study, it concludes that when employees are considered as high in moral identity, they are less likely to use the so-called an eye for an eye method to resist the abuse. Instead, they would choose a way that is considered high in moral acceptance. In this case, the direct contact of the employers and the actors might be considered to be less moral, as it will cause unwarranted violation of the concept of rank, and it might also cause unwanted remorse from other people, which can also be attributed to the responsibility of a member in society mentality mentioned above. The trace of the actors not wanting remorse from the public can be observed from their actions on Twitter. They deleted most of their tweets and did not tweet after the final statement Unlimited have posted, which might be a response from them not wanting the incident to go more viral than they expected. But there is one thing to consider, and that is, if you go viral, you never go back. In this case, in my opinion, going viral is better than not speaking out, as shown in a study. You have a very high chance of committing suicide in the future anyways if you do not react to this properly. The reputation of Unlimited, which now renames to Brave Group, has been ruined, and the subscriber count of the Game Club project has been dwindling since pretty much the start of the drama, and now it just barely passes 300,000 subs. They did, however, founded some new channels, for example, Claire, Kaiwa, Kazama, Yuika, etc. They were doing pretty okay, and everything seems to be going fine. 3 of the original 4 actors of the Game Club project after the resignation were then founded their own new VTuber group, and they have garnered a pretty good amount of subscribers. I will put the link of their channels in the description for you guys to check them out. A pretty good ending to this drama, I guess. So what's the main takeaway to this? The inner lives of VTubers has been a curious topic for a lot of VTuber fans to talk about, and after this incident, so does their working environment. After all, the actors were performing to the audience through a virtual representation. The audience can barely notice the subtle differences of the characters' life. If they were being exploited, without other means of communication such as Twitter, the audience would barely know. An example would be Azulim and her cry for help on Twitter at the end of 2019. If she was unable to tweet that out, no one would notice the thing and the oppression towards her would still continue. This is a sad reality, and that is the cost of going virtual. Let's just hope that there would not be any other companies trying to exploit or to oppress their VTubers. Again,